Good morning. Monday morning, the day after Easter. And I don't have to work today, so that's nice. Came back over here to Crane's Roost Park after I dropped my wife off at work. Very colorful fountain. Nice over here when the sun's not quite up yet. Had an interesting experience when I was driving back through the back here, going over to Starbucks, pick up my coffee, and it's kind of hard to see up there. A couple of those little roads that go through between some of those businesses, and the person in front of me went across the intersection, and after they went, I started to pull out. I actually thought it was a four-way stop. I didn't realize that the people coming up over the hill didn't have a stop sign, since I don't usually go through there. But man, woman came flying up there 40, 50 miles an hour. So I saw her coming and I stopped. You know, the nose of my truck was out a little bit, and she had to stop and point out the stop sign to me that I had and everything, you know, and I was like, slow down, you know, and you know, obviously I had a stop sign, but man, she was flying. Don't want to get in between people in their morning rush. She has places to go, man. So that was fun. But yeah, this is a nice peaceful spot to hang out. I don't know if I'll go walking around the perimeter here of the lake since I'm wearing my flip-flops. But just wanted to do a little video. Filmed a little video yesterday over at Daytona Beach with my wife's phone. I have to get that off of her and upload it. It's a pretty busy day over there compared to most of what we've seen lately when we went over there. Everybody off work for Easter, I guess, and you know, spring break going on for people. But the thing I wanted to do a video about was that stabbing spree up in Illinois that happened a few days back. 4 people got killed. One of them, one of my fellow postal workers, just out doing his job, you know. And then I think like 5 other people were injured, several of them very seriously. But I was just thinking about the lessons you learn from that, you know. The first lesson, of course, for those of us who have a concealed carry permit or live in a place where you can carry a gun, whether you have a permit or not, is how important it is to be armed. Just the fact that somebody could have stopped that situation. It started out from the video I watched on one of the local news channels up there. He killed his one friend. I guess, I don't know if he ran him over first and then stabbed him and then ran him over again. But there was stabbing and running of people over. Let me have a sip of this coffee. I think I want to lean my phone up against my coffee. See how that works. Put it back there a ways. But yeah, he ran over his friend. Supposedly he was friends with him. I don't know. I guess the guy had mental issues, you know. But if somebody's really your friend, you're not going to be running them over and stabbing them. Now, I always wonder about that when it's your friend. Must not have been too much of a friend. But after doing that, you know, he went in the house, killed the guy's 60-year-old mother. Then he went, I think the postal worker was the next guy that he killed. And I think he may have run him over too, stabbed him. And I think the postal worker was calling out to the person that lived in the one house to call 911. And the guy started going toward his house, and he closed the door, was looking at him through the peephole. And then I forget the exact sequence of who all else he killed. He ended up, though, went in this one house, found a baseball bat in the kitchen or something, went downstairs. There were these 3 teenage girls down there, or I don't know, a couple of them were teenagers at least, like 15 and 13, something like that, and maybe 11, I don't know. But the 15-year-old, she ended up dying. The other 2 were critically injured. But he attacked them. They were in the corner of the room, attacked them with a baseball bat and stabbed them. But I couldn't help thinking as I watched all that, it reminded me just how critical it is to, that if you can be armed, to be armed, because you never know what's going to happen. You are not the one as the good guy who gets to pick when these things happen. For most of us who are sane, unless you're in the military and it's your job to go find bad people and kill them, for the vast majority of us, if we know there's going to be a gunfight, we stay away from it. You avoid the situation. It's the bad guys who choose when there's going to be a gunfight, where it's going to happen, what the conditions are going to be. The only thing you can do and prepare for in advance is the things you have control of is your level of skill. You learn how to shoot, what kind of gun you have, and what kind of ammo you have. Those are basically the three things you can control. The rest of that stuff, those are things you can prepare for in advance, because what you're carrying with you, what you have on you when it happens, is what you've got to work with. And those are things that you can control in advance. You can practice with the gun and get good, make sure it's a gun that's worth using, it's going to work when your life is on the line, and make sure that the ammo you're using is ammo that is powerful enough to stop somebody who is trying to murder you. Other than that, everything's controlled by the bad guys. They are the ones who determine when it happens. They get to catch the good guys by surprise. And in this situation, you look at everything that happened. Any one of those people at any stage of that situation could have solved the problem if they had been armed. The first guy, if he had been armed, if his mother had been armed and seen what was happening with her son outside, and then when I guess her son, after he was wounded originally, he ran in the house. If those guys had had a gun in there, this is Illinois, so, not exactly one of the freest states when it comes to being able to defend yourself. His mom, at least, somebody could have had a gun and ended that situation. But, and this was something that was spread out through 3, 4, 5 different little individual crime scenes over like maybe a 3 or 4 block area. So this was kind of a running thing, and all those different places, somebody could have stopped that. Whether it was the person who was directly being attacked or someone who saw it happening and could have intervened. The person who saw this mailman being, attacked, instead of just locking themselves in the house and looking out through the peephole, if they'd had a gun, they could have gone out, protected someone, defended their community, and stop this guy from killing anybody else. But the other lesson that I took from this, and that I think we all need to consider, is that you never know how many people you are going to save with that gun that you are carrying. You don't know. If you were the first person there that this guy attacked, and you had a gun and you could stop him, every single one of those other people who were attacked and wounded and killed, they could have all been saved from that. If you're that first guy that he attacked and you could have stopped him, your mother would still be alive, aside from you yourself maybe still being alive. Or even if you were to end up dying from your wounds but still were able to stop him, think of all the people who would still be alive after that. At any given point, there's a squirrel climbing up the tree behind me. Sorry, just caught that out of the corner of my eye. Made sure it wasn't somebody jumping me, Even though I can see in my phone, nobody is. At any given point, the person who stopped that could have saved all the people that were killed or wounded afterwards. And we don't always think about that. But, think about the parents of those 3 girls. In a normal situation, say that somebody early in that spree, say the first guy or his mom or the guy who saw the mailman being attacked, one of those 3 people, if they had been able to stop that guy, the parents of those 3 girls, they might have watched that on the news and said, oh wow, that was just a few blocks away from here, and thought, man, it's crazy that this stuff happens so close to us. But they would have had no way, they never would have dreamed that the person who stopped him actually saved their 3 daughters too. It's just not something we think about, you know, because there's no way of realizing when you stop somebody like that who else you're saving. All the people that they would have gone on to murder afterwards. And that's the thing about carrying a firearm and being willing to step up and do what needs to be done to save other people. James Yeager, Tactical Response. Of course, he died, unfortunately, here, you know, a year or 2 back. And but one of the things he talked about, he had a couple videos about active shooters, and he made a point that some people may agree with, some people may not agree with, that you have 4 choices when you're in a situation like that. You can be a live coward or a dead coward. In other words, you can choose to run away and save yourself and be a live coward, or stay there and do nothing and be a dead coward, or you can be a live hero or a dead hero. And those are the 2 options that really someone who is carrying a gun for self-defense and for the protection of others should only be considering. You know, you might die in your attempt to stop the person. It may, whether it's a successful or an unsuccessful attempt, you may end up dying, in which case you would be a dead hero. Even if some asshole shows up and decides to shoot you instead of the bad guy, because they're not smart enough to recognize that, you know, you're not the bad guy doing bad guy things, you still, you know, you're a hero for saving the people. Or you could be a dead hero, you know, or you could be a live hero, stop the bad guy and survive. Some people don't agree with those choices necessarily, but I think it was Gabe Suarez who pointed out, like, how do we know, how does somebody know when they show up if you're the good guy or the bad guy when they see you with a gun, or when you pull up on a scene like that? And really, it's easy, you know, because the bad guy is running around killing innocent people and the good guy's not, you know, so it should be fairly easy to figure out, okay, this person is not running around murdering innocent people, so they're probably one of the good guys. You know, people try to make it sound like, oh, I don't want to get involved because, you know, well, you know, that's on you. Because the other choice we have that we have to think about when you're in a situation like this is, how are you going to live with yourself afterwards? That's something we all have to take into account. Now, if you're in, you know, there's a certain contingent of people, many tactical trainers, some of whom are very experienced former police officers and so forth. They have the philosophy, not my people, not my problem. And the reason they say that is just because in today's litigious society, even if, you know, if you're doing the right thing and you solve the problem and you save a bunch of innocent people, you're going to have, somebody's going to sue you. Maybe some asshole politician, DA for political points, is going to try and prosecute you, even though you were clearly doing something that was morally justifiable. For many of us, we would say perhaps morally obligatory. You know, it's a moral obligation to step in and to save your fellow citizens and your fellow innocent humans from subhuman pieces of shit who are trying to murder them. In today's society, a lot of people have lost track of that, but those who are real humans, real men, you know, women, understand that that's the way it is. You know, it's an obligation to our society. And even when you look at it from that perspective, really even self-defense is a moral obligation, because you're an innocent person who is being attacked by a vicious piece of crap too, and you have an obligation really to society, not just to yourself, but to our society, to not allow creatures like that to prevail. But let's say you decide, say you're in a situation, you're in a mall or somewhere, and you have the ability, you see something going down, you know there's an active shooter, maybe there's a few people running around with machetes or something, and knives, attacking people. Different situations are going to perhaps call for different responses. If you're there, obviously, with like your own family and so forth, say if I was at the mall with my wife, who's 30 years younger than me almost, and has her whole life ahead of her, my first priority, no matter how much of a hero you want to be, my first priority is probably going to be trying to get my wife out of there and keep her alive, you know? When you've got your family and other people like that that you are directly responsible for, that's your first obligation. That sounds kind of cold sometimes to people that want to be heroes, but all those other people at the mall or wherever you are, they had just as much chance as you did to decide to carry a firearm and be able to take care of their own protection and security. So you can't really look at it all the time like, oh, well, I'm like, failing these people, because they had the chance. All these other people walking around the mall or wherever you are, they had just as much chance as you did. I'll wait for this guy to go by here. They had just as much chance as you did to realize that we live in a violent world that is filled with vicious predators who like to kill and wound and rape and maim for sport. And they made the choice, oh no, I don't want to carry a gun. I don't want to have to think about that. A lot of people really, on a certain level, think if they just avoid it and they just try to be a nice person, it's all going to go away and it'll never touch them. A lot of these people in this situation, the stabbing spree, they may have thought that. Certainly these young girls, they never thought about this stuff. Did they ever think they're going to be trapped in their basement with some, bat-wielding, knife-wielding freak who's going to, like, stab them and beat them to death? It was, I think, up in Connecticut the one time where the man and the wife and his two teenage daughters, the two escaped, or not escaped, but former felons, broke into their house, took the wife out. The one guy took the wife out to the ATM, to get money. They raped the women and ended up killing them, burning them to death. The man at one point, I think, had to escape, went next door and talked to somebody. If those people that had a gun in that house and knew how to use it, any one of them had gotten able to get free for a couple of minutes, they could have ended that situation, But they were probably living there in their nice little world and thinking, it's never going to happen to me. I often wonder, what does that man feel like, that his family, his wife, his daughters were raped and burned to death, and he never set them up for success in terms of being able to survive an event like that, You can't blame the victims, but, people have the chance to understand what kind of world we live in. You can't just make it go away by pretending that, oh, it's not like that. We have to accept the world as it is. I was raised, by pacifist, Jehovah's Witnesses, and, they're living in a fairy tale world, and daydreaming about how sweet it's going to be, and God's going to come down someday and make everybody's problems go away, and everything's going to be perfect. And that's not the way it works. God expects for us to take care of things. Otherwise, he obviously had plenty of chances for centuries, for thousands of years, to change things. So if he's running things, he must have a different plan in mind, and that plan involves us taking care of these things for ourselves. So you can slink away, but you have to ask yourself, how am I going to feel for every day for the rest of my life? Looking myself in the mirror, Have a little of my shaken iced espresso here. Because every day for the rest of your life, when you turn your back on a situation where people need help and you had the chance and the ability to help them, you're going to have to remember that. Maybe you don't care, maybe you can just walk away from it, but a lot of people can't. And on the other hand, just because you didn't get involved, that doesn't mean that you should feel bad. Every situation is different. But the one thing that this stabbing situation should teach us is that it can happen anywhere to anyone. So you need to be ready. And also that when you're carrying a firearm and you get involved in a situation like this and you stop a person like that, you think, oh, it's just one crazy person with a knife. But you don't know how many people you're going to save by getting into that. You could save 8, 9 other people from being stabbed, possibly murdered, or at least very critically injured, and all their families from that heartache. And like I say, the parents of those 3 girls, if they just heard about that situation on the news, it would never occur to them, oh wow, we should go thank that guy for saving our daughter's lives, because You know, once you've short-circuited that bad guy's plans and solved the problem, you don't know how many people you saved. You don't know what house they were going to end up into next, just by pure chance, you know? And go into the person's house and find a baseball bat and start beating people to death. But you do know that they're a violent threat that needs to be stopped. They're a tactical problem to be solved. A lot of people, they just feel like, oh, I can't hurt anybody. No matter what they're doing, I could never hurt someone. But when a person engages in that kind of behavior, they lose any right they had for the rest of us to think of them as a fellow human being, as a fellow citizen. They become, at that point, a tactical problem to be solved. And as cold as that sounds, that's the fact. And that's the lesson that we need to take from that. You know, I myself, I'm not as, what should I say, committed sometimes as I should be to making sure I'm always armed. Of course, as a postal worker, I'm not allowed to be armed most of the time, you know. When I'm at work and so forth, or even in the parking lot at the post office, I'm not going to throw away my career, my pension and everything to violate those rules. So that's a chance I have to take. But when I'm on my own time, certainly I try to remind myself that you know, you can't lose track of what world we're living in. Anyways, those are just my thoughts on that for what they're worth. And but it helps me to understand when I see something like that how much I need to renew my commitment to making sure that I am caring when I can. And not just that, but like I stated before, what are you carrying? You know, there's 3 things you can control before the situation. And that's your skill level, how good you are with the weapon you've chosen to carry, and how effective and capable that weapon is, and the ammo you've got. How much ammo do you have? How many spare magazines do you have? You don't know what you're going to need, how many times you're going to have to shoot someone, or how many of those rounds are going to be, you know, deflected by the car they're driving or something when they're trying to run you over. You need to have spare ammo. You need to have a gun that's capable of doing the job. And those are the things you can control before the situation happens. So when you do find yourself in that situation, then you're ready to deal with it. And so you might not want to think of yourself as a hero or whatever for doing it, but you don't know. You don't know how many people you're going to save when you get involved in a situation like that. You have to make the decision in the moment when you find a situation like that developing, whether or not it's something you should get involved in. But we have to get back as a society to being willing to step in and solve these kind of problems and take care of our fellow citizens. And that's that. Go out here, walk around a little. Wasn't planning for this to be quite as long of a video as it is, but morning. People out enjoying. Oh, there's another squirrel. Lots of squirrels around. The sun is finally coming up. The Florida sun. It's only in the low 60s right now. Getting up to like 86 though today. More construction. A never-ending thing around here. But I hope that, not that I'm some great sage on these matters, but just a good reminder, things we need to think about whenever you find yourself in a situation like this. Don't know if I got a snakehead or a turtle coming across here. Might be a couple of turtles together. Lots of turtles swimming around out here. At any rate, have a good day.